Soulless Dead, Chapter 11, PTSD. As I sat in the makeshift hospital room that we'd made in one of the old churches, the doctor had walked out. I sat there and looked at the extent of my wounds. The protrusions of flesh coming out of the bullet wound that I had indicated infection. That renegade grenade that was thrown at me in the stairwell from that maniac had caused internal bleeding and severe bruising on my surface. Not to mention that the pre-existing injuries that I had were being flared up and irritated. And to top it off, I'd lost some hearing in one of my ears, and I had severe scarring and burning on one of my arms. It was something else. I looked at my shell and felt like I was running it into the ground. My hand was shaking, and it hadn't stopped shaking since the days that I'd returned. I just didn't notice it. Why was it shaking? There was nothing wrong. I was safe. I stood up and limped my way to the sink with a mirror. There was a bucket of water in it, and I splashed some on my face and on my neck to cool myself as I hung my head. It was nice. It was relaxing. It was something that I definitely needed. I looked into the glass, and for a brief moment, I saw blood pouring from my eyes, and at first I was taken back. I stumbled and punched the glass. Hand still shaking, glass now protruding from my knuckles. I stepped back. Voice shuddered, breathing was fast. I limped back to the chair and sat down and began to sob. Before the doctor had left, the first thing he told me was my hand was shell-shocked from the damage and the shooting. I was still a civilian. I wasn't used to it anymore. I didn't know that sort of thing. I began to sob because he had told me I had post-traumatic stress disorder. So I really was going crazy. With one hand over my eye, I looked down on my hand, and it was bleeding. I could barely see anything. The water from my eyes, the tears were blurring everything. It was almost like a symbolism. All that blood that I had shed began to blur my vision, began to blur what was right and what was wrong. But I'd done so much good. I looked out the window and I saw our community. The walls that we had put up were 7 foot tall, 5 feet across, and several inches thick of concrete that we began to pour around the perimeter of the town. We began to lay barbed wire on the outside of the town, rancher style, to keep those disgusting dead cattle, you know the ones, from getting into my town and eating my people. Look at all the good we did. PTSD was just a small price to pay, I guess. But that hand continued to shake. I looked up and thought about it, and our small, meager force of only about 150 people had swelled to close to 500. Random groups had begun to join us, and we began broadcasting on the radio our presence to bring in people, and sometimes we'd get raided, but we were able to quell that quite quickly, with minimal injury. We had medical supplies, we had weapons, we had tanks, we had trucks. We had plenty of people, and we had military that could train those people. While it wasn't the best training, it was sloppy at best, we had people that were better than most civilians. We had discipline. We had safety. We had doctors. We had pharmacists, chemists, and engineers to give us windmills to make power, something that everybody else didn't have. Unfortunately, a week ago, the military had started some sort of operation. Luckily, we were able to hear it over the ham radio on a rogue transmission. We decoded it and found out it was called Operation Kill Switch. The electricity was only open because certain officials were guarded in power plants and other energy form systems. They were being kept up for some reason. We weren't totally sure. The kill switch was immediately ordered just out of nowhere. We didn't know what it was at first, and then we heard the call. They told them that all personnel were to pull out immediately. All power was to be shut down. Why, we even heard from a couple ham radios up north towards Michigan that a power plant was abandoned, and about a week later it went to meltdown and exploded. I guess that's what they were worried about initially, but considering our country's falling apart at this point, was before, what did it matter? They tell us that we're just essentially not worth it anymore. Abandon all hope, is what I heard on that radio. And it made me grip my teeth. We're surviving. We're fighting off people. We're fighting off the dead. And we're surviving. We have a little society up here. We're safe. We have a town council. We even have a military. And those people who were put in charge of us before can't even supply power for us. Water pressure went out and everything like that went down. So now I'm finding myself crapping into a bucket, peeing into mason jars. Not exactly something I liked. It just made my hand shake harder. That declaration of war I had made was foolish, I admit, because I wanted to go to war immediately. But some of my friends had begun to tell me, in my military group that I had made, that we should take our time, and I agreed. We began to train. We began to grab resources. We went to the military bases and gathered up people, survivors, and military equipment, tanks. We even went to a Cessna plant. We found pilots hiding there. Of all the places to hide at work. Of course, really, there was nothing of true value there, so I guess it was a good place to hide. Plenty of fences, too. We took a few planes, and about 8 pilots, which was a good thing, because we were going to need them. Our radio and communication system was advanced. Everything was right. Every squadron would check in, every hour on the hour. There was relief. There was prosperity. Something was happening. We were fighting back. There was hope. The only thing that made me worry was monsters that like me, that had turned into what I am. Were beginning to crack. The nightmares, the cold sweats, the pain, the drinking, the pills, everything had began to stack up. But I was doing my duty, and I was making myself worth it, so you can't blame me. We were being prepared. This is who I am now. And maybe one day I'll turn it all around. I don't know. But we were safe. And that's all that mattered to me, and I couldn't care less what people thought. My life was a nightmare. But at least I was owning it. Whenever I'd walk into a building to get supplies, he would sort of look away. The people that I had trained, they would acknowledge me, but the people that I knew, people I loved and cared about, were worried. I could see it in their eyes, and I could see the judgment. Was I so bad? I don't know. The best thing I could do was continue to push forward and go out there every day with a knife, or with a stick, or a gun, and blow those monsters' heads off and get rid of my problems. The doctor said to take it easy, but this was no time to take it easy. There were people telling us stories coming in about the gangs in Wichita that had begun to run the city. They would treat the dead cruelly and nail them to walls and strip them of their skin and all sorts of disgusting acts like savages. We even heard that they had began drug trade. Of course, at first we were like, there's no money. But then we realized they were just taking supplies from desperate people. We're too stupid to know the better. It was truly something to behold that people could do that to each other. We even heard that there was a sex trade going on, selling of people, survivors that could help the world change, and they were taking them as a commodity, as meat, like cattle. We heard some horror stories, and it just fueled my resolve. We had our papers, we had our plans. We'd even found trains, military trains, full of flak jackets, thousands of them. Guns, food, material, maps of the area, even maps of domestic threats, like those gangs. The military knew. They knew, but they gave up. But we won't. You see, in this world, there are two people. The people that survive, and the people that will die one day. It's very black and white. It's nothing too romantic. It's nothing too crazy, because it's just the truth. You either live or you die. You will crumble or you will build up. We had our protection. We had what we needed, but we needed to strike. We began to split the squadrons up into 5 squadrons. The 1st through the 4th were all fighting men, very well trained at this point. I even became friends with the lieutenants from ex-military, and believe it or not, I was placed under command because I had been in the town longer. Those boys had the discipline to respect an officer, and I loved it. I loved being behind that gun. It was like a photographer. You capture a very exciting moment as you're looking down your sights. You aim, you look at them, and they look at the white of your eyes, and you fire. You fire, and there's a flash. And if you think about it, PTSD is like a photograph. You'll see it every day of your life, every blink, and no one really cares until they have it. But after that flash, it's like a photograph melted to the back of your head. Every time you close your eyes, you can see it. Every nightmare you will have, you will replay it. And it's something that I'm going to have to live with, but it really is like a small, gory photo album. I'd been adding to it. I was being poisoned, they say. I needed to take it easy. I was too young for this, or something like that, but it was something that needed to be done. They should know there's plenty wrong for me at this point. I would rather die in battle gloriously than to live doing nothing. We began to mobilize, and we'd even grabbed artillery guns, mortars, long-range rifles. That was our 5th squadron. Planes and whatnot, artillery, that sort of thing, support. I wanted to take direct charge of that. We had coordinated everything. We'd even trained. We'd had little models made up of how we would raid. Our scouting teams and our hunting teams would get close and watch them, and all the vile acts that they were doing. They lived in a compound just in the middle of the city. There were hundreds of them, partying and drinking and discharging firearms. We could even hear the small explosions they would make, all the way out where we were. With no cars, no sound, no music, you could hear just about everything in the dead of night. The nightmares kept me up to where I would just look. I would watch the horizon and wonder if something better would come. But I was too impatient to really hope for it. I had to make it. We were ready. They weren't. We knew that they were the cause of the trouble, and if we had to use them as a scapegoat to get rid of all of our problems and to make our presence known, that's fine with me. We will rebuild, and we will make the world back the way it was. As stupid as that was, that our leaders were telling people that, I knew it wasn't possible, but I went with it because it gave people hope, and false hope or real hope, what's really the difference? It was something. It was something for them to cling on. If that got them to pick up rifles and to cock hammers and send rounds down range, that's fine with me. And that's when we began to prepare. We got our 88mm guns. We had our mortars ready. We had deuce and a halfs parked in lines, men getting ready, young kids, and even some women that wanted to fight. We had a small airfield in the field just beyond our town. A couple Cessnas were jerry-rigged with some miniguns. They were slower planes, which meant we were able to strafe. We loaded them with C4 charges bundled with grenades and napalm and C4 all in one. We'd throw them out there, and as we got away, a man on the ground would pull a trigger and kaboom! No more people. No more to worry about. The trucks had begun to move. We had ratcheted a tank to a truck and had the turret move, because if we were to be attacked, we wanted that gun to show them. We wanted it to show them that we were able to fight back in defiance. No one was going to catch us with our pants down. No more of our people were going to die, and we were going to slaughter each and every one of those people. Those swine. Those pigs. I would take their leader, and I will skin him. And I will be sure that he knows that we will not die without trying. Some would say the PTSD is fueling my anger and that it's clouded. Isn't it amazing how the things that we damn and the things that we hate, the things that drive our passions to the point of insanity, become a weapon all of its own?